Have you ever finished watching a Marvel film and just felt like something was missing? If so, welcome to the channel. I'm here to help you pin down exactly what that elusive something is. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has some amazing moments. The overarching stories and crossovers provide entertainment for millions. However, this video will explore the decline of individual Marvel movies and how these films without their cinematic universes would feel like bland, characterless, and repetitive stories. Then, so I'm not just spreading negativity out into the universe, I'll give Disney some constructive criticism so that they can get their franchise back on track. This is important as Marvel films influence the filmmaking industry. If other companies see these bland movies making money, then they are going to adopt these techniques. There are plenty of examples of film companies trying to emulate Marvel's success already. I'm sure you're aware of the DC Extended Universe, but have you heard of the attempted Dark Universe, which is supposed to start with the flop of a film, The Mummy? Or the Godzilla, King Kong, and Pacific Rim are now all part of the Monsterverse? This means that there could potentially be a large number of disappointing movies like these coming out for years to come. Telling a good story does not require the setting to be realistic. It just requires the stakes, tones, and emotions to be part of the story and the characters. The characters in Marvel films never feel like they are fighting for anything important, whether that be something they value, the world, or an emotional battle. The conflict feels lackluster and generic in many of their films. When humans view media, they connect with elements due to the emotional connection they feel with the characters, especially character flaws. When presented with characters that have superhuman abilities, it is important to give them human qualities, flaws, and emotions. Not only will this raise the stakes, the audience will be rooting for the character because they can project elements of themselves onto them. For example, what if Marvel further explored the character of Captain America? The dude was frozen in ice and woke up 70 years later, and this is his entire reaction?
You've been asleep, Cap, for almost 70 years. You gonna be okay?
Yeah, I had a date.
Not only would he be a huge racist, wouldn't it be interesting if more thought was put into his mental state after waking up with the world being so drastically different? Unwelcome change, social isolation, homesickness, and not to mention the loved ones he left behind should play a role on his psyche. All of these emotions would make for a more interesting and relatable character to an audience, and would make for more interesting plot points within the MCU. The problem is that these characters are good all the time, which is just not human nature. These characters should have moral grey areas and should be put into situations where there is no right choice or making the wrong choice can be justified. All of the characters should not be acting like friends and teaming up because they all should have their own motives and personalities. Some characters should clash and others should have chemistry, creating more realistic feeling people. This would also make the world more interesting because instead of having set villains, there would be tension in every room based off different characters' opinions. Incorporating real-world consequences, reactions, or depth to the implementation of supernatural and technological advancements is important for the MCU. One of the best ways this can be done is to give directors more creative freedom so that each movie feels different, allowing them to incorporate their styles of storytelling, themes, tones, experiences, characters, visuals, music, and arcs. It is well known in the world of filmmaking that a protagonist is only as good as their antagonist. The antagonist's stories and motivations should intertwine and complement the protagonist. Unfortunately, the MCU has a formula problem. They love to use these evil versions of the heroes. The repetitive arcs of these films make them feel lackluster, not allowing for creative freedom in the name of safety. Many MCU films fit into the same mold and the villains are rarely fleshed out. They end up being a mindless punching bag who wants to hurt the main character, take over the world, universe, or multiverse because, well, they are evil. Put more emphasis on a compelling villain. Have them directly link with the hero's individual story as well as the overarching story. Give them better motivations than they are just evil, or that they want to rule the world or galaxy, The audience should have sympathy or at least understand why a villain is doing something, would justify having the villains reoccur throughout the cinematic universe, rather than the role of most villains, which is to appear in one film and then be killed off. Malekith the Accused, or as you might know him, that one evil guy from that bad Thor movie, is widely regarded as one of the worst villains in MCU history.
In last place is Malekith.
Dark Elf Malekith had almost no personality.
He was literally the textbook definition of a bad Marvel villain. He wants to rule the galaxy with a big army, and that's about it. So to try and demonstrate what I was talking about, I gave an example on a potential way to improve his character. First of all, take away all of this thousands of years old and just wants to bring darkness to the universe, and the only one that can stop him is Thor's grandfather. What does this have to do with Thor's character? Aside from the fact that he regularly enjoys saving the universe from immediate destruction. Malekith could instead be Loki's mentor and a part of Odin's council. At the beginning of the movie, as Loki is being sentenced to prison, he tries to convince Odin to reduce the punishment, arguing that they are just humans. Odin could then silence Malekith and banish him from the castle, still giving Loki a life sentence. As the movie develops, Malekith inspires rage within the people of Asgard, feeling that Odin is a cruel ruler and the humans are less important to the galaxy than the Asgardians, the protectors. He even speaks to Thor, who cares for Loki, and Thor begins to buy into the Dark Elves' ideologies. See where I'm going with this? Malekith also becomes a father figure and mentor to Thor that Odin could never have been, and Thor begins to care for him. However, when Thor expresses doubts at some of the methodologies of the Dark Elves, and is dismissed by Malekith as being a non-believer, leaving Thor alone and confused, left with this mental conflict of who he should protect, his father and his home, or Malekith and his brother. This is just an example that I came up with in 10 minutes, and I'm sure that $1 billion movie studio like Marvel can come up with some great mental conflicts and links between their heroes and villains. The tension building within these films have the potential to be good. However, a huge issue with many Marvel films is bathos, or an anticlimax to lighten a film with otherwise dark themes. In Marvel films, these usually come as jokes. For example, this scene from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Yes.
Now,
But my mother. You said you loved my mother.
And that I did. It broke my heart to put that tumor in her head.
What?
no, all right. I know that sounds bad. Who in the hell do you think you are?
You killed my mother!
I tried so hard to find the form
That best suited you! And this is the thanks I get?
you really need to grow up.
This scene had the potential to be an emotional moment within the film where Peter hears of the cause of his mother's death and tries to make sense of it. Maybe Ego still wants to work with Peter as he cares for him. He can see the potential mental conflicts here, but instead Peter just shoots Ego repeatedly for a visual gag, Ego yells at him in a mildly comedic way, followed by an atrociously timed David Hasselhoff joke. Telling a joke is not inherently bad, but funny or not, if it's interrupting the flow of the story, character development, or a potential emotional element of the plot, then they're obstructing the quality of the film. Again, taking away from the realism and reality of the characters you are seeing on screen. Keep some of the jokes but reduce them. Only insert them when in appropriate places, not in places where it is going to block emotional moments or reduce the tension. Observe the genre of this film and what kind of jokes are appropriate in that movie. Some of the best films in the franchise have been funny ones, or have made changes to genre, tone, and style. Like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, this film provided appropriate comedy and vintage feel through a great use of music. Alternatively, Captain America Winter Soldier, which is a mystery-based film, or Deadpool, which takes a morally grey character and presents his actions in a funny and unique way. Even though the overall world building of the MCU is good, the smaller details within each movie can be worked on. These characters have superpowers. There needs to be more real-world consequences, reactions, and deaths to the implementation of supernatural and technological advancements. There are examples of these like Spider-Man Homecoming or Captain America Civil War. However, a whole lot more detail and thought could be put to make these worlds feel richer. There are rarely any consequences shown for the characters' battles during every movie. For example, people's homes and many public areas are often destroyed throughout these films. Would people not be processing superheroes after the death of so many innocent civilians? Why do they seem so universally loved? A great example of a relatable human situation being created out of a ludicrous concept is The Truman Show. If you have not seen it, Truman's entire life is fabricated and his whole life is live broadcasted for the world to see. Even from this ludicrous premise, anyone who has seen it can still imagine their life being a TV show and the real human emotions related to it. This premise, if incorporated correctly, could help really improve the MCU. Focus less on the world intertwining and becoming a cinematic universe, and rather focus on the character building and the themes for each movie. When this is done correctly, the world building will happen naturally. It will be clear how all the characters act and what motivates them. This will lead to natural feeling crossovers, as it is easy to see which characters would have chemistry and which would resonate one another. Conflicts and relationships between characters will feel more realistic, as the characters would be more fleshed out in the first place. Another thing that has been happening more with the new Marvel films have been these political agendas attached to them, where characters are used for political gain rather than exploring that character and how the political issue affects them. A prominent example of this was Captain Marvel. Now, it's not so bad in the actual film, but the marketing was focused on the fact that the lead was a female, which of course is a great leap, but it is not what makes a great film, as you know. The frustrating part is that many of these characters were not created to show that men are superior or should be the only ones with superpowers, but rather to show that people are willing to sacrifice themselves, show humility, and serve others. For example, the film Wonder Woman from rival universe DC Comics was the first superhero film to feature a female lead, just as Marvel presented Captain Marvel. This film also featured the issue of feminism. However, Wonder Woman was set in the 1940s, an era, as you know, where women did not have much respect or rights within society. So obviously it makes sense as a theme of the movie, and it didn't feel like it was being pushed onto the viewer, but rather acknowledged. So my suggestion is to keep any political agendas relevant to the story, otherwise leave them out. Visually, Disney used the same color grading for all of their Marvel films. The problem with this is that the color grading they use does not involve any blacks, but rather dark grays. This in turn does not let the other colors pop, creating an unappealing wash feel to the visuals of their movies. Changing this could also have a different feel to each of the films, making them feel more grounded, unique from one another, and emphasize the tones that each film is attempting to display. Patrick H. Williams goes into this with a lot more detail and is definitely worth a watch. I'll leave the link in the description below. Music is important within cinematography, and many Marvel movies have unremarkable songs that do not add to the plot and could improve the feelings and tones of the film. There is a heap of great videos that go into detail with Marvel's music and why it is not memorable in comparison to other franchises. You can find some of these in the description, so I'll quickly go over some of the general problems with the music in these films. They do not provoke an emotional response. It tends to be generic. You tend to just tune it out. Music is used predictably to evoke the literal response they want you to have, which seems very safe. Something you'd expect from this YouTube video, would you not? It needs to challenge your expectation. It does not let you listen to these potentially iconic sounds. And on the filmmaking side, digital technology allows the music intentionally not to be heard. However, I think this shouldn't be the case, as music is such a valuable tool when creating a film. Importantly, there tends to be a heavy use of temp tracks, which are intended to be tracks that are used during the process of editing a film to temporarily fill this film with music. Unfortunately, there seems to happen with a lot of these big films is that they all reuse each other's temp tracks. To explain, let's say I'm a movie director and I use a temp track and I really like this temp track. And I will then go to my composer and ask them to replicate it as close as possible, but have it different enough so we don't run into legal troubles. This means that the loops of these similar sounding tracks are being used in the final products of many modern films, making them sound generic rather than iconic. Melodies and reprises, when done correctly, can be incredibly satisfying. Endgame was an example of them using the same melody whenever there was a remotely heroic moment. This theme could have been more impactful at the end of the film, I think, either when Captain America picks up Mjolnir or when all of the heroes come through the portal, because instead of having heard the theme throughout the film, it would have been a great callback to the first Avengers film, creating a more emotional impact with this track. At the end of the day, these films are designed to be entertaining family films to appeal to a large audience and make as much money as possible. Disney does not want to take risks with these films. I just think it is important to have a good product first and then worry about money later. The simple solution is for Disney to allow more creative freedom in their films, but this could affect their bottom line. This makes sense from a business perspective, as by minimizing the chances of flop by using a formula that works, they can make more money at the box office and sell more merchandise to kids. However, from a creative and filmmaking standpoint, this is unfortunate, as many of these films have interesting premises and just require small improvements to their execution. I don't expect a huge diversion from their formula now. We'll just have to wait and see what the future is like for Marvel. Like and subscribe to the channel, that'll help me out a lot. Hey, thanks for watching my first video. I think the direction of my channel is going to be more like just an interesting topic I come up with and write a script with like this, with an opinionative piece that's backed up by evidence. And of course you guys can debate or counter argument in the comments. Obviously, like this topic was very nitpicky of all these Marvel films, like a lot of them are great. And I thought it was a cool cover, and I hadn't really seen anyone, like people have talked about it but not put it all together from all the different areas of the internet. So, you know, if you enjoyed it, definitely, yeah, help me out there, and thanks for watching, guys.